Hopefully it'll turn red any moment now. It did. All right, so yesterday we talked about the Ottoman government, their religious policies, the Janissaries, and now we get to trade. So, as we already know, with them controlling Constantinople, renaming it to Istanbul, the Ottoman Empire is going to control the trade between Europe, Asia, and Africa. It's right smack dab in the middle. And so things that the Ottomans controlled were like silk, cotton, because cotton was something that India was producing and people wanted. Rhubarb, porcelain from China, so that those dishes, that glassware is going to be very, very prized in Europe. Spices, because guess what? Today we take for granted you all have, salt, pepper on your tables probably, all sorts of delicious things, cumin and, curry powder and paprika, all those things. Guess what? Most of the world did not have those. Those were grown in Asia. Like India was famous for its spices. Dyes, like indigo, which is kind of like bluish purple, I think. So the Ottoman Empire controlled all of that trade. And of course, the Ottoman Empire was wanting to get very wealthy from controlling it. So eventually, like I said, people got ticked off with having to pay. And Europeans said, okay, we need to find another way around. So we have people going and circumnavigating Africa. And we even have them trying to go west, which wound up to the discovery of the New World. It's one of those things that often isn't talked about, but the Ottoman Empire is partially responsible for us all being on North America right now, because I don't think any one of us are full Native American. So we would not be here necessarily if the Ottomans hadn't gone and made it so expensive to get Asian goods, and then Europeans going to search for new ways to get to Asia, which is kind of cool. Another cool thing that the Ottomans really pioneered and started are coffee houses. The Ottoman Empire made it popular for drinking coffee, and basically they're the people who started these ideas where a bunch of guys would go to a coffee house and drink coffee and talk all day, which is kind of one of the things that also helped spark things like the Renaissance even. I'm sorry, ladies. Unfortunately, it was just dudes. They thought girls drinking coffee was immoral, which is kind of crazy. Especially now, because I know way more girls that are into coffee than way more dudes. I personally only started drinking coffee because I was tired from having a kid, and now I'm addicted. So here we see, once again, the trade is going through Constantinople to get to Europe. The Ottoman Empire ruling, this area of the world means that they control all the trade coming from China, from India, from Southeast Asia, all of those things that people wanted. So we're going to have some new trade routes being developed, of course. We have them circumnavigating Africa, as I talked about, and we're also going to see they're going to wind up going to the New World. We're going to do a crash course and talk about how Venice is going to be one of the few Europeans who will continue to trade with the Ottoman Empire, and how beneficial it will be for the Venetians. Final slide, decline of the Ottoman Empire. Why did it end? This is where our success criteria is. This is where we need to remember, why did the Ottoman Empire end? Well, first off, bad rulers. We talked about how Suleiman the lawgiver was a fantastic ruler in so many regards, but because he did not choose his firstborn son to be his heir, because he chose the son of Roxolana, it started the tradition where the way you become sultan is by killing your brothers. So fratricide, not a very nice thing to do. Don't even do it, Nora. I know sometimes you think about it because it gets on your nerves. Fratricide is a no-no. So what we have here is a situation where the most ruthless are becoming the rulers. The people that not necessarily the most talented, but just the people that are most vicious in killing their family, which is just kind of crazy. 1571, we start seeing the beginning of the Ottoman decline with military defeats. They get pushed back from Vienna again. And after that, instead of constantly winning battles, the Ottomans are constantly losing battles. And this is going to be something that's going to happen time and time again. We see that their territory, in 1683, their highest extent, how much territory they had. But by 1914, at the beginning of World War I, it was just a shell of its former self, ruling in parts of Arabia, ruling Asia Minor, and just a wee bit into Eastern Europe. By this time, the Ottoman Empire is going to be what's referred to as the sick man of Europe, because it's this old empire that was once so powerful, would have been declining slowly over time, getting weaker, smaller, less influence. And part of this is because of the economic problems. As we discussed on the last slide, now that the Americas are in the picture, there's a lot more competition for trade. Joel is able to get all sorts of natural resources from North and South America, which makes Joel and his nation extremely rich and powerful. Plus, because we're having people going around the Ottoman Empire, cheap products from China, from India are going to still come into Europe and make it so that Europeans aren't as dependent on the Ottomans for trade. So they can't have those huge price premiums that they once did. So they're making less money. You know, like I said, more trade that's kind of similar going along with these ideas. And because of this, they wind up having a lot of unemployment. People don't have jobs. People can't pay taxes, which means less money. And of course, if you have less money, you have a weak army. Remember, the Ottomans, the Mughals, they were powerful because they had the best military technology. You know, Babur was able to defeat the Sultan of Delhi with, 10 times, who had 10 times the soldiers because he had cannons, because he had guns. The Ottomans are able to go into Europe, go into North Africa because they have cannons, they have guns, they have all of these weapons that make them extremely dangerous, extremely powerful, and allows them to just roll over the enemy. But now that they don't have any money, they're not able to go and buy those weapons. Europeans have those weapons. Europeans then beat them in battle. So for World War I, really, the Germans, they invited them to join the Axis more just to make sure that, the British and the English, the Russians, had someone else to fight and attack to get them off the German backs. Now, the Ottomans surprisingly did relatively well in World War I, but it was more because of poor generalship on the British. Winston Churchill is very famous. He did something called the Gallipoli campaign and just basically marched his guys into Ottoman machine guns. It was terrible. But even with that, by the end of World War I, when that's over, all of this land that the Ottomans had is gone too. So they just had a little small fraction. And by 1924, the Ottoman Empire is gone. Typically, we say 1923. The Sultan, Mehmed VI, he stopped being Sultan in 1922. John Green's going to say 1919 in the video that you're about to see. So it's kind of confusing. You'll see a lot of dates. Most people say 1923 is the end, though. So I'm stopping the recording now. Do we have any questions about the Ottoman Empire?